Hello, hello, and welcome to the Temple of the False Pod, where our decks aren't optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
And today we're just gonna sit back. We're gonna talk. We've got Commander Legends just recently released. We're gonna talk about our favorite,
our legendary moments.
Yeah, our legendary moments, the legends that make our Commander games so fun. Bruce, you've been playing Commander hell of a lot longer than I have been playing. Tell me about about a game, about a moment that stands out for you that exemplifies Commander as a format.
As comical as this is, one of the games that most exemplifies Commander to me as the format is one of the first games I played, which was in fact not a Commander game. So much of what I see with Commander or what I'm looking for in Commander games is what I'm looking for in virtually all multiplayer Magic games. So whether it's 60 card games with a group of 4 people all playing at once, whether it's 4 or 5 player playing a plane chase game, or whatever other formats people are looking at, I'm really looking for a lot of the same thing. I want the interaction between the players, and I want the plays on the board to be spectacular as a way to feed that interaction.
I think my worst game of multiplayer, or that might be a stretch, most of my worst games of multiplayer have been better than my most average game of one-on-one. I think a lot of EDH players can very much grasp onto that idea that multiplayer outshines just duel. But it's obviously a preference, but
right. Well, and that's exactly it. So for me, one of the stories is basically my first actual game of Magic. A few months earlier, I had been asked to pick up a box of Ice Age for some friends who were interested in this brand new game of Magic, and they wanted to get more cards, but there weren't any cards to be had in their area. So they asked me to go and buy a box. I was living in Wyoming at the time. And So I went to the local game place and bought a box of Ice Age and brought it back home with me at Christmas, where I proceeded to hand it to them and not ever think about it again. So it wasn't until that summer when I got back and got into my first real game of Magic with these guys. I had bought 2 of the starter decks. They're what were then later termed tournament packs. Essentially, these are the equivalent of roughly 3 packs of Magic cards, plus a bunch of basic lands. And they came in a little cardboard box, so that it looked like it was roughly the size of or just slightly bigger than a deck of playing cards. Anyways, I got 2 of these because they came in a gift box, which had 2 of these tournament packs, and then a little tiny drawstring bag that had a bunch of beads in it that you could use as counters. And it even said Magic the Gathering on the outside of the bag for, the first 6 months until it wore off. Anyways, so we're playing this game, and there's 5 of us, I think, playing. And not surprisingly, they're not attacking me. And I'm not really doing much of anything because I don't really know how this game works. And I built a deck with the 150 cards I currently own. Now, if I remember right, I did manage to get it down to just 3 colors, but I was playing every single card of those 3 colors I had, and I'm pretty sure I had a few lands that tapped for mana that wasn't in my deck because I needed the land. I just needed that much land. So
basic lands were a scarcity at the time?
Oh, very much so, especially with that. And that was also back in the day when it was 33% land, 33% creatures, and 33% everything else. That's how you built a deck. In any event, we're well into the game, and at this point, I finally get a chance to play out one of my creatures. Not surprisingly, in early Magic, the creatures were not generally very good. And this creature could only be considered not even as good as even those creatures. I played Rabid Wombat. Now, for those of you listening at home, Rabid Wombat is a 4-mana creature. It's 2 and 2 green. It is a 0/1. A 0/1 with vigilance.
Oh.
For 4. Now, it didn't say vigilance. It just says it doesn't tap when it attacks. Because this is old school Magic. We're talking 4th edition. However, the ability on the card is Rabid Wombat gets +2/+2 for each aura attached to it. And even then, it really wasn't aura so much as it was each creature enchantment on it. Because auras as a term did not exist. So anyways, Rabid Wombat. And I'm looking, and my deck must have been better than I thought, because Rabid Wombat is from Chronicles. That's where I would have got it. So I must have bought some packs of Chronicles by this point as well. In any event, I played a 0/1 for 4 mana because I had to have some creature out there. So one of my friends took pity on me and said, if I put an aura on your creature, will you promise not to attack me? And I thought to myself, well, if he puts an aura on it, my creature will then become a 2/3 with an aura. So yeah, let's do that. So I think, if I remember correctly, he played Unholy Strength on my creature, which turned the 2/3 into a 4/4, if I remember right. Okay, so now I've got a 4/4 with Vigilance. This is something worth talking about, sort of. But it was there. So as my turn was going around, somebody else thought, why not? It's like, Bruce, will you not attack me if I put an enchantment on your creature? Well, why not? I've got 4 opponents. I'm probably not actually going to attack anyone anyway, because it's my only creature. Sure, let's do that. So he puts a Holy Strength on my creature. So now I'm getting +4/+4 from the creature, and another +3/+3 from the auras. The actual size of the wombat really doesn't matter. On my turn, I looked at the board and thought, okay, so I can attack, and completely forgot that it has vigilance, and chose not to attack anyone because I decided I wanted to have my creature available to block. So after my turn, it was explained to me that you don't even have to tap him to attack, Bruce. You can just swing. All right.
It's the one good thing it does.
Right. So hey, learning experience. I now know this. So it goes around the board, and one other person puts another aura on my creature. So this thing is getting stupid now. However, there's one player left who hasn't put an aura on it. So on my next turn, I attack that player. I believe they chump blocked with a 1/1 because, well, I didn't have trample.
No trample.
However, that quickly stopped becoming a problem, stopped being an issue. Things started to really get out of hand at this point. The player who hadn't put an aura on it finally did, and then it just kept going. And it got to the point where I was announcing that I would just attack whoever had the least number of auras put on my creature. Because I think at that point I had 7 or 8 auras on this guy, so he was going to swing in for a lot. I believe he also had flying. So a flying wombat that was going to do probably over 20 points of damage if it hit. So
nice.
Yeah. So that should be that was going to be pretty handy. Now, I don't remember if I ever actually hit anyone for 20 points of damage. I don't remember who won the game. All I remember was this game is awesome, and I can't believe my wombat got that big. It set up expectations for the next game, which would not be met, but at this point I was hooked. I found out that you could do all kinds of crazy wild interactions, and it wasn't until months later that I discovered you can actually play Magic with just 2 people. I swear I must be one of the only people who was ever introduced to Magic and had no idea that originally it was supposed to be a one-on-one game. Who knew? So that's sort of my initial story, the story that kind of sticks out for me as far as what I really like to see from these games. That interaction with friends and the wild and crazy moment in the game. I love that, and like I said, that's what really stuck out for me. So Andy, what about you?
As you know, my birth into Magic, the beginning of my Magic, it always feels weird to say, but career. I mean, it's when I started playing, was through you. I had played previously back in like middle school during like summer camp, day camp. There was this kid who would always bring like a couple decks and be like, "Oh, does anybody want to play?" And I'm like, "I don't know how." He was like, "All right, I'll just teach you." So I probably had played twice before meeting you, and you got me started off with some of the starter decks free from your LGS. A couple weeks later, brought in some of your 60 card decks. Played that during lunch, and then probably a week after that, you brought in some commander decks. And I didn't know what to expect. And the deck that you had brought in, the very first deck that you had brought in, was your Nissa Vastwood Seer deck, which is the flip Nissa. She starts out as a creature, and she enters a battlefield. You search for a basic forest, reveal it, put it in her hand, shuffle your library.
Right.
Then she has a landfall trigger that if you have 7 or more, she flips into a planeswalker. It's a decent planeswalker by today's standards, but I can see how at the time it was probably huge.
Honestly, the planeswalker in that deck is there as part of the ramp package. You're just adding lands, and honestly, when you flip her, you're looking to add lands, and it's a card draw. So I never worry about putting out Ashaya, the Awoken World. I certainly don't ever look to untap 6 target lands and have them become 6/6 elemental creatures. That's just a great way to see your land get destroyed by an errant wrath. No, the card is solely there to draw cards and put forests into play.
And that's kind of the thing too. So after we played that game, a couple weeks later, you were like, "Hey, every Thursday, I have friends come over. We have pizza, play Commander. You should join us." So the very first multiplayer EDH game I had ever played, I wanted to play this deck again. And it was probably turn 5 or 6. I don't remember what card exactly. It was probably Avenger of Zendikar or something. It made like a buttload of tokens. I had so many lands out at the point in the game. I probably had 20 to 30 lands out just because it was that far into the game. I was really like kind of rolling with the ramp every turn, getting out more and more. Played Avenger of Zendikar, got out so many plants. By the next turn, I almost definitely didn't have any of those plants anymore, but just that feeling of getting all of that huge play that just kind of happened. It was an amazing addictive feeling where I was just like, oh my god, this is what the game is. And I could not tell you if I could do anything with those plants. I couldn't tell you who won that game. But the sheer power of just seeing this unfold, of how like finally understanding that play sequencing matters. Certain enchantments, like there was, I probably had a doubling season out when that happened. All of these things like fit tightly into this. I mean, honestly, it's one of your more focused decks. It was great. It kind of ended up forming what I love about the game. Tokens. Honestly, like if I ever had to play a specific type of deck for the rest of time, it would probably be token. It's inspired me to want to make more and more token decks. I think I've got an Amara from the new Amara, where she taps and she makes tokens. I want to make a Slimefoot deck that's not like just busted. I just want to make Saprolings.
Andy, I think you might have a problem.
Yeah. But like just making that many creatures, it's a lot of fun, even though they're tiny. With the new set, Tana got a reprint, so I'm hoping that like she's green red, makes Saprolings. I want to add in some black so I can get that Slimefoot in there, some sort of black, green, red, or whatever. I just that Nissa deck, it prepared me for what I was in for.
Oh, you mean a deck that ramps like crazy and then doesn't really finish?
Yeah, have you seen my decks? my Muldrotha deck, honestly, I was like, I don't want to put, or when I first built that deck, I didn't want to put I didn't want to put a win condition in there. I just wanted to see the value and have the value, and then if somebody kills me, at least I got value. But as we all know, Muldrotha is a bit busto. I play Commander to have those big plays, as I'm sure you do. I mean, we've talked about it for literally days on it.
Yes.
And you've taught me. Oh, wise sage! You've instilled in me this idea.
About that.
You've instilled in me that it's about everybody. It's not just about me as a player. It's about the table having a good time. So all of my decks, first draft, start off with what is it I want to do? How do I want to go about it? And sometimes it never gets past that first draft because I don't know how to hone it in and try to put a win con in there.
Right.
What's a deck that you've started and either never been able to finish, or have gotten it to the table and been like, this isn't how it's supposed to be? What's a deck that you've never been able to pull off?
So you're asking for my white whale, and you're asking for the moment that it just doesn't seem to come together. And my answer is a little different, because it's not the deck that you draft up or a deck you go through and build online and look at it and tinker with it and mess around, and then it just never seems to get to where you want it to be. For me, my white whale is Krond the Dawnclad. The reason it's so different is that I built the deck. I didn't just build the deck. I built the deck and I played it and I played it and I played it and I wrote about it. This was during my it was right in the middle of all my article series. I wrote about Krond at least 5 times, and in all of those times, the deck changed again and again because I kept trying to make it work, and it just wouldn't work. For those of you who are wondering, where is it here?
Krond the Dawnclad.
Yes.
For white, green, green, green.
Thank you.
I
think you're hearing the problem already.
6 mana for a 6/6. Legendary creature Archon, flying vigilance. Whenever Krond the Dawnclad attacks, if it is enchanted, exile target permanent.
To me, if I'm going to play Commander, I'm going to build my deck around the Commander. So I'm going to try and build my deck around a 6/6 flying vigilance creature that costs 6 colored mana. Right off the bat, I built the deck, understood that it was going to be tough getting all the colors, so I packed the deck with a lot of lands, with a lot of ways to get that colored mana. Mm-hmm. The early builds had no problem getting Krond into play. I could do that again and again. What they didn't have was, I didn't have enough auras in the deck, because without the aura, Krond is just a 6/6 flying Vig creature, and it's just not that exciting. And if somebody kills him once, then he's a 6/6 flying vigilance creature that costs 8.
Yeah.
And then we start getting into the world where it's just not worth it to cast him anymore. So I altered the deck. I added more enchantments. And, it's Commander, so I picked big, splashy enchantments. And there again, couple of games with that, it's like, look, doesn't work, because you put him out there, and as soon as you try and enchant him, somebody destroys your creature. You lose your enchantment, you lose the Commander, so now the Commander comes back out, he costs 8, but you now need to find another aura to target him with. And then you find it and go to do it, and somebody kills the creature again. This is stupid. So then I said, okay, well, fine. The best way around this is to just play them both in the same turn. Well, okay, now I'm not playing my Commander until turn 10. Well, okay, now it's really pointless because you're only ever going to get to attack once. So I'm not playing until turn 10. And if I don't give him haste, he's not attacking until turn 11. He has Vig, not haste. So it wasn't working.
And by this point, game's winding down. Luckily, most of the time, probably, nobody's been attacking you because you're hardly a threat.
I am no threat at all, because the rest of the deck essentially is a bunch of cards that get you to Krond. So I'm at Krond, but he doesn't do anything. Like, okay, fine. So then I went back through and searched for enchantments, or searched for auras that cost either 1 mana or 2 mana, and then somehow protected Krond. Whether he became indestructible, whether he was hexproof, whether he had shroud, whatever it did, it had to protect him in some way, even if it's just protection from colors. Whether it was an armadillo cloak or something, it had to have something to protect him. Well, then we finally started getting somewhere. I finally managed to get to the point where, okay, I now have 7 mana on the board, 6 mana on the board. Don't play Krond. Don't do it. You will regret it. Don't play Krond. So the next turn, you'll get your 7th mana available. Now you play Krond. And then you wait a second. Nobody's countering. All right. Then you tap that last mana and put something on Krond that makes him indestructible, does whatever. I mean, I'm not going to go into the particulars. Y'all can look it up. The reason is not really that relevant.
Yeah. I mean, I've played this deck.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I've played this deck a handful of times, probably like 2 or 3 times. First time I played it, I don't think I understood what I was doing. I don't think I understood what the deck was trying to do, because I think I just like picked it up and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I remember the second time I had gotten Celestial Mantle on Krond, and just like you said, immediately he becomes a target. He's at that point. Once you get Celestial Mantle on, gives him +3/+3, so he's a 9/9. And when he attacks, or when he deals combat damage,
when he attacks.
When he attacks, he destroys?
Yes. Exile target permanent. So you don't have to exile the permanent from the person you're attacking. You can swing at somebody who has no defenses and then yank the best card off of somebody else's battlefield.
So then he's a 9/9 with Celestial Mantle, and then whenever enchanted creature deals combat damage to a player, double its controller's life total. So like, you put it on Krond, he's a 9/9, you double your life total, so nobody's gonna let you hit anyone with him. It's this double-edged sword of, it's too much value in a card, but it's too expensive to even try.
Well, and this was part of the problem. I finally found the solution to make it so that I could use Krond to create those moments that you remember. So then the first game where I actually managed to get there, I won the game because nobody realized what exactly was happening. But then in the next game, suddenly everybody's like, okay, Krond is useless until it has an enchantment on it. But once it has the enchantment on it, Bruce has got to die. Well, the deck is not good enough to protect me from that sort of thing. It's not even close. If you're gonna put a rating scale on it, then 3, maybe a 4. But the problem is that the deck is puny and weak until it's not. Right. So it goes from a nothing deck that does nothing to this monstrosity that you just can't let go. I mean, essentially, you've got nothing, and then suddenly you have an Eldrazi out. There's no middle ground for this deck. There's no middle place where somebody can say, oh, Bruce is having a good game. It's not crazy yet. We're okay. We don't need to swing at him right away. So it's either nothing, nothing, nothing. In other words, Bruce has nothing. To nothing, nothing, nothing. Oh my God, he's got to die now. And then I just die. That's how this particular creature goes. So when you're talking about that white whale, that deck that just doesn't quite work, it's Krond. It is definitely Krond for me. And it's comical because I've got a lot of friends who associate me with Krond because I've written so much about him. I mean, I keep calling him the Flying Lion. I want this deck to work so bad. I just do. I love the card. I love the art. I like what it does. I just, the whole thing. And I just can't figure out how to quite make it work. And of course, I still have the deck. I haven't taken it apart. I'm still going to fiddle around with it and maybe try and figure out a way to build some defenses before Krond hits. And then when he comes out, I'm not just a complete lame duck. I can actually continue to do Krond things and do all kinds of craziness.
Yeah. For My white whale is Traxxas, Scourge of Krug. Which it's so hard because he's colorless. So it's like I could make him the commander, in which sure, but so for those who don't know, Traxxas Scourge of Krug is a 4 generic mana 7/7 with trample. It says, do you have it up?
Yeah. It's Traxxas Scourge of Krug enters the battlefield tapped and doesn't untap during your untap step. Whenever you cast a historic spell, untap Traxxas.
So the very first time I played this card was the Dominaria pre-release, when historic spells were, this new idea, this new classification, I guess, in Magic. Historic spells, for those who don't know or don't remember, artifacts, legendaries, sagas, which is 70 to 80% of your non-land cards are like going to generally fit in that pool.
Right.
So Traxxas, in my pre-release, I had him, and I had On Sarah's Wings, which is 4 mana enchantment, 3 and a white, legendary enchantment, enchant creature. Enchanted creature is legendary, gets +1/+1, and has flying, vigilance, and lifelink.
Vigilance.
So, yeah, that was the big thing, vigilance. And the fact that it was legendary. So you play Traxxas, he's tapped, he's kind of lame. You play him on turn 4. The next turn, you come around, you play On Sarah's Wings onto him, which procs his ability, and he untaps.
And then never taps again.
And now he has vigilance, so he never taps again. But also he's got +1/+1, flying, lifelink. So he's a flying 8/8 with lifelink that never taps.
Yeah.
I had that happen. I had that magical Christmas land happen in my first pre-release. And I was like, I need more of this. And so I've tried to put that in so many decks.
So you've tried to run it in decks where, let's just say, instead of 40 card decks, we're 100 card decks. So you're trying to run a combination that only really works well when you have both of these cards.
Yeah.
In a 100 card deck as opposed to the 40.
Yeah. And my most recent excursion into that has been I think this is where its permanent home, its resting place is going to be, is Raf Capuchin, which he's a flyer, he has flash, he's blue and white, and you can play historic spells as though they had flash. It's great for keeping up counters. It's great for all of the equipment. It's great to play artifacts, equipment, Traxxas, and then legendary enchantments and all these great things that make up the white sphere of Magic. And I have yet to have it go off, but that deck's fun. It's essentially just historic flash, and it's pretty unassuming for really what it could be. But that would have to be my white whale, is Traxxas, Scourge of Krug.
So I think what we're saying here is that these decks that haunt us are decks that, we get to work once early by sheer fluke, and we're both enamored to the point where I will never let this go. I will never let this go. I must recreate this moment again and again. So
it's that first crush moment of just like ooh, who's that pretty card combination? But with that, we're going to jump over to our advertising break. So we'll be right back. This episode of Temple of the False Pod is brought to you by
Drownews Pet Store. Come here for any pet supplies you need, even for your rabid wombat. Drownews Pet Store. What a weird bird. Now back to you.
All right, Welcome back. Thank you so much, advertisers.
We really appreciate you supporting our sponsors.
With Commander Legends, there's this big emphasis on drafting. As somebody who's drafted probably less than 20 times total, most of which being on Arena, which is, needless to say, not a true draft experience. Tell me, I know you love conspiracy sets, the unsets.
Oh, yeah.
Battlebond. What are you looking forward to with Commander Legends as a draft set? Or like what do you look forward to just in general with Draft Matters sets?
First off, you've mentioned virtually all of the sets where you are drafting with the goal being a multiplayer game. And that is definitely my wheelhouse. If you're looking for information about regular drafting, you have come to the wrong place. So wrong. So wrong. I draft almost not at all with the regular sets. Any drafting I do that's one-on-one is generally a cube from one of my friend's cubes. You know, the closest I come to a regular draft is a chaos draft, 18 or 24 random packs, and away you go. And again, that's not your typical draft experience. But for me, the original Conspiracy opened my eyes to the idea of a multiplayer draft format. And it was everything that I was looking for. My group at the time was very much oriented towards multiplayer games, and we all enjoyed a little bit of draft. So we would play a lot of chaos drafts and do a little bit of cube, but it was never quite, you just didn't get that mix, because when you were doing it, you were playing one-on-one. And that was fine every once in a while, but it always felt like you were losing out on the opportunity to have a multiplayer game. So Conspiracy comes along and says, okay, we're doing both. The format was amazing. I loved it. I would say that it was the first set of Magic cards where I bought boxes of it. I bought more than a case. Two of the other guys in our play group also bought cases. We had Conspiracy was something that we were drafting every 2 weeks, it seemed like. We guaranteed that we were drafting it at least once a month, and we preferred to draft it every 2 weeks. We loved the format. You know, we worked out most of the decks that were available in the format. We enjoyed it so much that I know of many other groups where they would Conspiracy draft and then use those decks throughout the course of the night. We would Conspiracy draft, play one game, get one result, and be like, okay, are we going to play Commander, or are we just going to draft again? Because we're not going to run the same decks again. We're just going to do another draft. And the format was amazing. We loved it. It just sort of got me hooked from there. So that when the second Conspiracy set was supposed to be coming out, I was ramped through the roof about it. My Twitter feed was full. I created a fake newspaper from Poliano, which is the main city on the home plane. I wrote, spoof articles about the cards from Conspiracy and predicted cards from Conspiracy 2, and it was just everything and anything. And oh my god, I loved this set, even down to actually liking the storyline. I liked the legendary creatures from the sets. But yeah, the draft format was unbelievable. And then Conspiracy 2 came along and added in the Monarch and brought in a bunch of other unique twists to gameplay. I didn't buy as much of it as I bought of the first one, but only because I just didn't have access to as much, or just knew we weren't going to play it as often. It was spectacular. Just really loved that set. So
yeah, I mean, I think Conspiracy 2 ended up introducing one of my favorite mechanics introduced to a multiplayer format, which is the Monarch.
Oh,
yes.
Monarch? Oh, okay. Oh,
Monarch.
yes.
Which
Not
I'm so
Melee,
glad.
Really?
I'm so excited to see that Monarch is coming back.
Yes.
Or, I guess at this point has come back with Commander Legends. and not just on reprint cards. They made new Monarch cards, and I'm just like, But yeah, I mean, the few times that I've played Conspiracy Draft, I think it's between the conspiracy cards themselves or the Draft Matter cards themselves. It is such an experience to go through that. Conspiracy, A+ in my book, and I have barely played. Between that and Battlebond, which is it's kind of conspiracy light. It's like two-headed giant conspiracy.
Basically, yeah. And for those who haven't, Battlebond is more. It's an opportunity where you and a partner are drafting against the other players on the board, but you're creating two separate decks. But you're working together, and you take a single turn. It is two-headed giant. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. But more importantly, you draft two cards at a time, and you're drafting at the same time as your partner. Like the two of you together draft. What I really liked about Battlebond was less the multiplayer experience, because they kept calling Battlebond a multiplayer, but it's two-headed giant versus two-headed giant. So you only really had one opponent.
Right.
I mean, yes, you had two opponents, but you only had one place to send your attack. So
you don't have that political.
Yeah, you don't get the political.
Intrigue,
you're swinging one way. That's how it goes. However, what I really liked about Battlebond was the opportunity to pair with other players to see how they valued the cards. It was an opportunity for me to get a lot better at drafting. When you start seeing how other players draft and recognize what they value and what you haven't been valuing. I was lucky enough I brought a box of Battlebond with me to Gen Con one year, with the stated goal that I wanted to try and get 4 people from Wizards of the Coast to play with me and 3 other friends. In the end, we could only get 3 people from Wizards, but when you're running in a draft with Gavin Verhey, Aaron Forsyth, and I think it was Mark Globus. These were some seriously good players. Hey, my cards, I got to pick my partner. I picked Aaron Forsyth, because why wouldn't I pick a Pro Tour vet? Just to see what he valued as far as what would go in our decks. It was an eye-opener for me, and it's not as though I don't understand mana curve and this sort of thing. It just, he brought that to another level and was sort of like, this will work really well with this card in a way that I just wouldn't see.
Were there any picks that you were like, let's go with this, and he was like, no? Like, was there any point where you were like, is he laughing at me?
No, he was always very good about not laughing at me. But I made a couple. There were a couple of late picks in one of the round where he literally looked at me and said, I don't draft this enough. Is there a difference between these two cards? And I was like, yes, this is definitely the one we want to take, because it was one of the partner ones, and I knew that we would get the other partner when it's somewhere along the line. So that was fine. But for the most part, it was a lot of the early stuff where my attitude was, well, should we continue to try and stay open here, or should we narrow it down? And his thought process had moved long past that, and he was already thinking about something else. So that was really interesting for me. And that's not to say that everybody else that I've played Battlebond with haven't provided me with the same thing. In our play group, I've been partnered with people who just don't draft at all, who are very rarely draft.
I think you and I have been partnered up.
I think so. But it's interesting to see how everybody else values cards. You get a chance to sort of stop and say, maybe we should think about this because it will allow us to ramp into this. Or maybe we should think about this because we're heading in this way with the decks, and that's sort of an option. It gives you a chance to learn and a chance to teach when you're playing in a regular play group. It gives you insight into how they think about the draft, which is nice to have for the next time you draft against them. So
yeah, with that kind of in mind, is there like anything you've seen throughout the preview season? What is there anything specific that you're looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to actually playing it. I'm looking forward to actually drafting it. Right now, for those of you listening at home, we're still in the stage where we're getting previews. So we don't know all the cards in the set. And I haven't even started to consider how this works as a draft format. How do you build a commander deck from this and then play it? When you realize that these single color commander partners means that you're less worried about actually using the commander and more just, okay, now I have access to all the black cards as well.
Yeah, I really like this idea that like you are using the color identity as a way to open up rather than restrict your deck. I'm excited with this new set. They're 20 card packs instead of 15 card packs. So the way they're kind of speeding up the process is that you do 2 picks before you pass. I like one of the biggest things I always have issues with when drafting is, you know, you watch people on Twitch, you watch people on YouTube draft and they're like, oh yeah, this is gonna wheel or this is probably gonna wheel, and I'm like, I'm so inexperienced. I'm like, I don't know, and then I just get anxious and I like have decision paralysis, and I'm like, But picking 2 will help ease that, I guess. That's what I'm excited about.
Right. Yeah, so I want to see how it plays as an actual format. I think there are a lot of people right now who are looking at this going, okay, I'm going to buy a box and then I'm going to crack it all and see what I get. And hey, you know, more power to you. And I appreciate that, you know, we are in the midst of a pandemic, but I'm going to be buying boxes in the hope that I can eventually play in person with other people. So I'm going to be buying a lot of boxes that are going to be sitting in a shelf. And they're going to sit there until I get a chance to round up enough people to play. So, you know, how long will that take? Well, it'll take as long as it does. But this is something that I'm looking forward to with the deck. I mean, I really enjoy the idea of drafting a multiplayer deck. And the idea of drafting a whole commander deck is very interesting. Now, if I remember correctly, there's supposed to be 60 card commander decks.
Yeah, there's supposed to be 60.
Yeah, so this is going to be a lot more like Brawl decks than...
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. This is really a format that I love to play. And it's a great way to create some fun edge to when you go out to groups. I've yet to go to a Gen Con where I didn't do a conspiracy or Battlebond. You know, when we were going to Grand Prix, I would regularly bring a box to try and make sure we get a game in. When you're offering up a box and saying, hey, you want to come draft? You don't have to keep any of the chaff. And in fact, I'm going to ask that you give me all the cards at the end. So just build the best deck you can. People line up for that kind of thing. And in the end, you get all the cards. So that's a win-win for me. And most other people are generally pretty happy about that too. So of the bunch, I would definitely most like to see another conspiracy set come out. I like that world. I liked the format. Battlebond was great as a multiplayer set, but you're either drafting it with 4 players or 8 players. You can't do otherwise. It just doesn't work. Mm-hmm. Whereas Conspiracy, you can have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 players. It works under all of those situations. So I like I like that kind of flexibility, so that, you know, on the course of any night, you can just simply start drafting it. You don't need to have exactly 4 or 8. And if you have exactly 4 or 8, man, you really want to play Commander, because then you've got exactly the right number of people. So, however, I will say that I do hope that if they were planning a conspiracy set or another Battlebond or one of these multiplayer group drafts for this coming summer, I hope they don't. I, as somebody who loves it, I really don't want them to do it next year. Big parts of the world are still going to be struggling with COVID. The group play is still going to be a difficult situation come this summer. Those sets are only going to sell well if you also have that as an option. I mean, yes, there are plenty of players who will buy the next conspiracy set just to crack the packs to get at the new legends. But the real joy for those sets is getting to sit down with your friends and play them. And, you know, I don't even want to try and do that using Zoom or playing it online. I want, I want that to be an in-person experience that I can have. And if it means, why don't you just put that on the shelf, push it back a year, swap a couple things around, make it happen in a time when you can maximize your sales on it. Because the last thing I want them to do is produce a conspiracy set that flops because nobody's playing face-to-face. Because it'll just discourage them from ever doing it again, and I do not want that to happen. So, yeah.
All right. And look here. I'm getting a note from Queen Marchesa herself. She's saying, hurry up. Well, I guess this is it. So, I've been Andy. You can find me on Twitter, at Twitch, wherever on the internet at Andy Weekend.
And I'm Bruce. You can find me on Twitter. I am at Manaburned on Twitter, and we'll be looking to play some Yorick here in the near future to enjoy the return of Manaburn.
Yes, live the brand.
Live the brand.
All right. We've been Temple of the False Pod, where the decks aren't optimized, but the plays sure as heck are fun. Have a great night. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Doo-doo-doo.